trying to see. I'm really not sure about the black. I think those are just empty cells. But this is larva that's in the pupal stage. Usually when the queen lays the egg, it's 3 days until the egg hatches, and then a worker will spend about 8 days as sort of a caterpillar-looking thing, a white caterpillar. And then they'll put the capping on, and after they put the capping on, it starts developing into what we recognize as a bee.
So the capping, tell us about that. What is the capping?
The capping is made of propolis and wax.
From the hive?
The bees manufacture a wax in their cell. The cappings over the larva have a little more air in them so that it can breathe. But when they put the capping over, you have the transition. You can see the second one from the left there hasn't started to pupate yet, whereas the one all the way to the left is already starting to undergo the metamorphosis and become a bee. So they look like that second one until they put the capping on, and then underneath, in the secrecy of the cocoon, like a butterfly, it makes the transition into an insect that you can recognize.
Wow, that's pretty interesting. Okay, next.
And this is just after they've finished. Worker bee will hatch at the 21st day after the laying of the egg, and when they first come out, they're kind of, I guess, like babies everywhere. They're kind of wet looking and a little bit disoriented, and they chew their way out of that capping cell. And the one on the left, you can see she's finishing tearing out the capping, and this is one that's emerging. One way you can tell the difference between bees and wasps are that bees are hairy. They have thousands and thousands of little tiny hairs that are sensory type organs. They also use it for collecting pollen.
Sure.
The hair grabs the pollen inside of themselves, and that's one of the ways that they can collect that. Here's the pollen on the back of the worker right there where she is. You can see it on a lot of the legs and on the hair. Some of the pollen off the flowers on there, and they'll take their legs and comb that pollen out of the hairs, put a little wad of honey, which will make it sticky, and then they put it on this little basket of their back leg, which is kind of like a saddlebag that they use to carry it back to the hive.
Oh, wow.
So,
and then they just let go of that, and that goes into the hive.
Yeah, they actually, the foragers do go and place that into a cell. So they'll get down in the cell and scrape that off the back of their legs, and then nurse bees will come and repack it or move it around to different places or whatever. But that's basically how they bring their food back. And the pollen for the bee it's 100% protein. Has all their amino acids. It's the nutrients and so on that they use to make more bees with. They're 100% vegetarian. Whereas wasps and so on might eat other insects. Honeybees get everything they need from plants. So the pollen is what they use to make more bees with, and the nectar is what they use for their energy source, their gasoline that allows them to fly.
So they're kind of eating as they go? They foraging, or they wait till they get back to the hive?
Hopefully, if they have a good nectar source, and I can't say that we've had very good years the last 2 years, but if they have a surplus of nectar that they found, they'll bring that back, and they can carry 85% of their weight in nectar from a flower and carry that back. They're utilizing some of that to fly, but they bring the excess back and pass it off to the nurse bee like that first picture showed.
And this shot?
This is actually from either a top bar hive. It's on its side, because actually the comb would be hanging down, but so to the right-hand side there is the top. But these are either wild comb, like you would find out in the forest in the old days, or maybe from a top bar hive. But you can see the white wax that they've actually created from glands in their abdomen. They eat the honey and the nectar and process that. And when they're really, really full, at the right time of year, when the temperature is right and all, they secrete the wax and they build these wonderful hexagonal cells. They're six-sided, which is by nature the most efficient source they can do. They're incredibly light but really strong. If you have a comb like that is full of honey, it would probably weigh 8 to 10 pounds. And yet the comb probably weighs fractions of an ounce that it's in. So in the very center of that, they probably can't see that at home. There are some of those little the larvae that I talked about, the little white worms that have hatched, those open cells. I don't know if they can see that. and then there's some capping right there in the center.
Uh-huh.
So these are baby bees that are being grown there. Around the periphery to the right, which would also be at the top, you see some yellowish orange color. That's pollen that's been packed in.
Uh-huh.
The nurse
Yes.
bees use to feed the larvae while they're growing them. There's usually honey and nectar. I don't really see it there, maybe off to the very bottom.
Now, a nurse bee, is that part of the court, or that's another hierarchy in the bee land?
You've got three types of bees in a colony. You've got the majority, which is the female workers that are not fertilized.
And those are nurses also?
Well, they go through a progression as they, maybe I should tell you about that. First thing they do when they hatch out of the hive, like we were watching there, is clean out their cell. They go straight to work and they clean all of the cocoon and everything that was spun around them inside that cell. And they clean all of that out. They go into a transition of cleaning other cells. Shortly after that, they might be in the queen's court feeding her. Then they become nurse bees, and duties are packing nectar, taking nectar from foraging bees and packing it away. And after they're about 3 weeks old, they become guard bees for a short time at the front of the hive, keeping other bees from robbing and other hornets and things like that, protecting the hive. And then after they're about the 3rd week, if it's summertime, they'll start taking orientation flights and they'll become foragers. So it's really kind of a gradation of the age of the bees. The drones, as we said, that might be 5%. They don't do anything except go out in the afternoon looking for queens. And the queen doesn't do much besides lay eggs, at least until this time of year.
Yeah, okay. Quite a system, and all communicating with their bodies and their minds, I guess?
Well, their antennas used for smell and touch and taste. It's completely dark inside the hive, so they're not actually seeing each other. It's mostly pheromone communication that they can smell and tell which are their colony mates and so on. So the guard bees at the front, if a bee comes back to the wrong place, if she's full of nectar, they let her in, and if she's not, then they run her off or fight with her, or perhaps kill her, because she may be there to try to rob horses for her own colony. But they can tell who belongs and who doesn't through the scents. That's a picture of. This lady's not in our club, but we keep bees in boxes on frames like that. The advantage is that you can pull the frame out so we can keep track of the bees and see how they're doing, if there's a problem, if they should become queenless, or if there's some disease problem or something, at least we can find out about it. Whereas in the old days with the skep, you couldn't open them up at all. You had no idea what was going on inside.
And I see that, she's protecting herself, but her hands are totally...
Yeah, generally, it's a good idea to keep a veil on because you never know what will happen. But most of the time you can go into a beehive without any real problems. It has something to do with how gentle you are, how fast you make your movements, and things like that. But it's not unusual to be able to put your hands in like that. And as I say, the people mark queens will pick the queen up.
Very interesting. I wonder if our scents are smelt by them as we pick them up.
I think probably so, but I don't think they know what to make of us, particularly. And if you go in on a nice sunny day in the afternoon, a couple of things. The foragers that tend to be a little bit more touchy are gone, off to work. And so you have the nurse bees who tend to be kind of, oh, how much is that happening?
Yeah.
So they just go on about their business, and generally it's not a problem. You wouldn't want to go into a hive on a thunderstorm. Or
yeah, okay.
Certain other things.
So they're kind of neck to high. Just hanging out there.
You would normally use a little smoke too, which a little breath of smoke across there does a couple of things. They think it covers the alarm pheromone, so if there is a bee that's upset and trying to get the other bees to sting, it disrupts that. Some say it reminds them of a forest fire.
So they kind of hunker down?
Well, they go and grab honey in case they have to take off.
So
they
they,
gorge on honey, and then when they're really gorged with honey, they have a hard time stinging because they have to swing their belly around to get the stinger in,
Gotcha.
abdomen down. So it's like if you're too full from Thanksgiving dinner, you're not all that aggressive. You know?
exactly, exactly.
So,
Okay, let's take a look at the picture behind.
Oh, we already did that one, I just kinda,
Oh, okay, so do we have a new one coming up?
that's it, that was all.
It's all of them? Okay. Well, let's also mention a couple of things that we can talk about. We can mention the club. So, Chris, we have a website where people who would like to get more information about bees can come to this website and start to learn more than we've taught them here.
right. It's there's schools every year that teach beekeeping, and it's not the kind of thing that you can learn in an hour or a day. You can get a general idea, but I'm still learning something every day about bees, and I've been working at it really hard for about 7 years. So this is the website for the Buncombe County beekeepers. It's kind of also reaches out to the clubs in the neighboring counties. On that site, you can find just about anything. We do a school. This year, we're doing one that is for existing beekeepers because we have been successful in educating a lot of new beekeepers, but it's getting even more difficult to keep the bees alive. So we're doing continuing education for the ones we've already taught. But on the website will be all of the secondary schools that are, like Hendersonville does a beginner school. There's going to be one at Smoky Mountain, I believe. McDowell has one. So all of the directions and dates and so on will be posted on that
On that site.
on that WNCB's.